This quote comes from Elie Wiesel. It was brought up by Miguel's attention, and this is the quote that he shined a light onto me. We must take sides. Neutrality helps the oppressor, never the victim. Silence encourages the tormentor, never the tormented.
Sometimes we must interfere when human lives are endangered, when human dignity is in jeopardy. National borders and sensitivities become irrelevant. Wherever men and women are persecuted because of their race, religion, or political views, that place must, at that moment, become the center of the universe.
Thank you, Robert. So when I see this quote, my mind starts to change, because I say, well, chapter 5 does not apply. But then when I look at this quote here, when there are conflict, should we take side? So the layout of the session here today is I'm going to just go over some of the chapter 5 and then chapter 53 and 75. I will probably talk like 20 or 30 minutes, and then we can have an open discussion on this one. So chapter 5, does it apply to this quote? Let's look at chapter 5 first. Chapter 5, hold to the center. Heaven and earth are not humane. They regard myriad of things as straw dogs. The sage is not humane. He regards people as straw dogs. Between heaven and earth, aren't they like bellows? It is invisible, yet it never changes. The more it moves, the more it produces. Too many words frequently lead to exhaustion. It is better to focus on the center. So this translation is done by me. I do Tao Te Ching translation, and I try to get the text as closer as possible to the Chinese text. So let me read the Chinese text to you. 天地不仁，以万物为刍狗。天地圣人不仁，以百姓为刍狗。天地之间，其犹橐越乎？虚而不屈，动而愈出，多言数穷，不如守中。So let's look at the first 4 lines here. Heaven and earth are not human. They regard myriad of things as straw dog. Can we all relate this verse as something in our life? What about the farmer? The farmer grows the crops, and after the crops grow to a certain maturity, then the crops, what happened to the crops? They are going to be cut, right? So the act of cutting, is it humane or inhumane? If we continue to cut, if we continue to allow the crops to grow, let's say the crops just continue grow and grow and grow and grow and grow, then human will not have anything to eat. Therefore, crops must be cut. But from the crops perspective, is heaven and earth human or not human? Today I just brought a whole bunch of orange to the temple. So if I take out the orange from the orange tree, I think the tree is kind of happy, because if the orange continue to stay on the tree, eventually that orange will grow old, and then it will just fall onto the ground, and the orange will be spoiled. So so is it our responsibility to remove the orange and allow the tree to grow more orange? And think about Christmas tree. In Christmas time, we cut out Christmas tree from the Christmas tree mountain. I mean, there's thousands, millions of trees being cut from Montana, from Utah, maybe from Oregon too. So those are North State. So those trees are being cut. They sacrifice their life for us, right? for us to be put into our home to decorate our Christmas holiday. So what happened when Christmas is over? What happened on January 1st? What happened to the tree? What are their destiny? Most people would put them in the trash can or just drag it onto the street, right? So it's a waste. So in other words, let's look at what are the definition for straw dogs. Straw dogs, in order to interpret this two line, you have to understand what is straw dogs. So straw dog in the ancient time, in that time they don't make statue and they don't have some kind of idol. They use straw to form some kind of animal shape, and in this case they make it like a dog shape, so it's called straw dog, and the dog is made out of straw and that looks like a dog. So after they use that for ritual. So after the ritual is being finished or complete, then the straw dog is being thrown away. Seems like the Christmas tree, after the Christmas holiday is celebrated over, then Christmas tree is being dumped. So that's how we look at the first two lines. And also for human too, human, eventually we will all die. And then when we die, some of us will say, oh, this person died. Oh, how come God does not spare life unto this person? Oh, why did this person must go? How cruel is life? How cruel is heaven and earth? But just think about it. If there's no cruelty to end the human life, everybody will be like million years old. Is that good? But I think the way that we have now, it's good because we go through, each time when we go through reincarnation, it allows us to have a fresh start. Although there's karma behind all of us, but we can everything is based on our free will. Okay, now the second one is the sage is not human. He regards people as straw dog. So how come the sage is not human? Think about Jesus. Jesus is crucified on the cross, and he wants his follower to carry their own cross. So in order to carry our own cross, we have to sacrifice our time, effort. We have to say in the Christian church, we need to donate 10% of our pre-tax income. So there's a lot of sacrifice that we need to do to ourselves, and in order to be Jesus' follower. So in this sense, sage is not human. Like here in our temple, Master Lee will ask Joanna to do this, do that, and do this and do that. So sometimes my personal life is sacrificed. So therefore, the sage is not human because the sage wants his follower to do so many things for the people. So on the surface, you would think that heaven and earth are not human, sage are not human. So this is the background for chapter 5. But if we go on, here we can relate that to the pendulum. I can use that. The analogy of the pendulum is that the more that we push, the pendulum is going to swing higher, right? So here, that's why it says the more it moves, the more it produces. Too many words frequently lead to exhaustion. It is better to focus on the center. So now I look at chapter 5. Chapter 5, I think it does not really relate it to this quote here, because this chapter 5, it's more for internal cultivation. It's more for how I harnessed my emotion, how I control my anger, how I control my resentment, criticism, how I not go into the direction of ABC, accusing, blaming, and complaint. So then I say, okay, if chapter 5 does not apply to this quote, then which chapter does? Then I turn to Robert. Robert say, well, chapter 53 and chapter 75 will work. So let's look at chapter 53. And I think chapter 53 and 75 are very similar, but from different perspective. But these are the two chapters that's more close to the quote here. Let's see. Can I find anybody to read chapter 53?
Okay,
And who is this?
me, Robert.
Okay, thank you, Robert.
Okay, are you ready?
Yes.
If I certainly comprehend and walk on the great Tao, I would be cautiously fearful of not carrying out Tao. The great Tao is level and flat, yet people prefer the winding path. The imperial court has numerous steps beyond reach. The fields are overgrown with weeds. The granaries are empty. They dress gorgeously, carry sharp swords, disgusted with food and drink, accumulate an excess of wealth and commodities. This is a robber following another robber. This is not Tao. I love that last line. This is a robber following another robber. This is not Tao.
Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
Okay, so on this chapter 53, let me go over really quick. So the great Tao on the third line here, the great Tao is level and flat. That is talking about the great Tao is very simple, plain, and easy to follow. Yet people prefer the winding path. People are looking for miracle. People are looking for magic. People are looking for fortune telling, channeling session. They want to know about their previous life. They want to forecast the future. So this is what the winding path. And then there's like the black magic. And then I think in the Naman, Naman, are you there? Do you remember Oscar mentioned about something about that he learned from Mexico? There's some kind of trick that you recite a sutra and then that deity can bring you all the good luck. Do you remember that thing?
So it's like some kind of Mexican. I forgot that deity's name, but it's the deity of the death. It's very
Okay.
scary deity.
Yeah, so it's the deity of death. I think in the Chinese culture, we also have this kind of deity too. So if you are connected to the deity can bring you fortune, good luck. But this fortune and good luck does not really belong to you. So it's like you are you taking a luck onto you, which it does not supposed to belong to you. So what happened? Eventually, you have to return it. So I want to tell you a story. A story just come into my mind. There was one man. He was poor, and he admired the people who are rich. So one day, not one day, for his lifetime, he tried to search for a master, or I should say a magician, that can bring him all the good luck. So he did find one and he paid him some money. So this magician was able to bring him money, just the money just coming. He buy stock, he buy lotto. So every time he purchased, the money just keep coming in. But then this magician supposed to stay with this person for a long time. However, because only him can cast the spell, and it's only him can dispel the fortune or the misfortune. Anyway, so this magician passed away. And when this magician passed away, all the spell just go disappear. And then the money start to drain out. And the money start to drain out, and eventually he become broke. Eventually he become a beggar. So this is what happened when you seek some. So when you seek some magician or somebody on the deviated path, those are not the path that's supposed to related to Tao. In other words, you want to align yourself to the true self, because all the false self will tell you to go for the winding path. The false self will want you to compare you to the other person. So that's the winding path. The imperial core has numerous steps. So why numerous steps? So in the ancient time, if we look at the imperial court, there's a lot of steps that you have to go up. So this step, it's a metaphor of red tape, bureaucracy. There's bribing involved. So literally, it means there's a lot of steps. There's a lot of hard work that you have to climb up. But metaphorically, it means that there's red tape. In order to go to the higher up, you have to bribe the small level, the lower level official, and then after you bribe the lower level official, you bribe the middle level official, and then the higher level official. So those numerous steps, it's beyond reach. And because the official, they have so much corruption, they bribe each other, so they don't really care about the people. Therefore, the fields are overgrown with weeds. They don't care about the people, and they don't care about the welfare of people. They tax people too much, and the granary are also empty because during this time, maybe a lot of citizens are being served to build the imperial court, such as I have a picture here. In the Qing dynasty, many people are sent to build a Great Wall. Okay, so so many people are sent to build additional imperial court for their for officials' well-being, so for them to live in a luxurious life. So all these are kind of easy to understand. They dress gorgeously, carry sharp swords so that they can look good, because the sword symbolizes their status. Disgusted with food and drink. Why disgusted? Here I have an explanation. So what happened when you eat so much of lobster and steak and beef? What happened? You become very picky of it. And sometimes even there's a steak right in front of you. If it doesn't taste good, if the vinegar is not enough, if the salt is too much, if there's too much of soy sauce, if there's not enough pepper, these people will just maybe take a bite and they say, I'm not going to eat it. So they are not satisfied their food. And this dissatisfaction comes from overindulgence in the past, because they enjoy so much food already. Their tongue is only suitable for good taste food. So when they are not satisfied with their food, they will want to throw away. But literally, it means that on this term, it means disgusted with the food. Nowadays, children do that too, right? Sometimes children are spoiled children when they take a bite. I remember my kids don't like broccoli, so I kind of have to force my son to eat broccoli. So so it's this kind of food that you don't like, but then you kind of need to eat it because you don't want to waste food. But in terms of the official, they waste food because the food does not taste good enough for them. Okay, so the next two sentences accumulate an excess of wealth and commodity. This is a robber following another robber. Yeah, so because if the higher official do that, of course it will have a domino effect. That's why Laozi have this statement. So from here we can say that Laozi takes sides. So Laozi is definitely against the imperial court or the official who overindulges in their lifestyle. So the difference between chapter 5 and chapter 53 is that chapter 5 is more for personal cultivation, but if there's external force involved from the government official who impose too much tax, who put too much labor requirement on the people, then the people will feel like they are a victim, right? And chapter 75.
People suffer from hunger due to their superiors consuming excess taxes. Thus, people are hungry. People suffer from hunger due to their superiors consuming excess taxes. Thus, people are hungry. People are difficult to govern due to their superiors' excessive interference with laws and regulations. Thus, people are difficult to govern. People take death lightly due to their superiors seeking to live extravagantly. Thus, people take death lightly. Again, it is only when one doesn't live according to self-interest one is able to live a meaningful life.
Thank you, Ayla. Thank you. Great. So this chapter 75, again, 75 and 53 are recommended by Robert, and I also agree with him too. These two are closely related to each other. Of course, in Tao Te Ching, there's also other chapter can back up to the quote in our slide. So the quote. So here, because our time constraint, I can only pick up 3 chapters. So in this chapter 75, we can break it down into 3 sections, which you can see in the bracket here, 1, 2, 3, and I also color them in different color too. So the first one is easy to understand. People suffer from hunger because the superiors consuming excess tax. Because in the old time, the official constantly demanding tax from the people, and there's the tax collector come to knock on the door. I'm here to collect tax. It's not like USA, we pay tax online and we mail, but the tax collectors show up on your door demanding tax. And if you don't pay tax, they just come and knock on the door morning and the evening time. And so imagine the tax collector come and you don't provide enough tax to them, they are going to give you white eyes, right? So what can we do? We can just give whatever we have. Therefore, people become hungry. So I want to explain this this text here. This text is 10. Oh, I forgot. Let me read this in Chinese. 民之饥，其上10岁之多，是以饥；民之难治，以其上之有为，是为难治；民之轻始，以其上求生之后，是以轻始。夫为无以生为者，是贤于贵生。So when I read this, it's kind of hard to understand because this is ancient Chinese text. Not even nowadays the Chinese younger generation can read it. But I love to read ancient text, so I can do it. Okay, so here, 食 means to eat. So literally, it says that the superior eat too much tax. That's the literal meaning, but figuratively, it means that the superior.
Does it also mean grain tax? It's grain tax, the first line, because I see that in many translations. They don't just say tax, they say grain tax. Do you see that in the Chinese there, Joanna?
It's more of consuming. It can be grain too, but grain, it's more like grain.
Joanna, you're starting to cut in and out. I don't know if other people, you're cutting in and out.
No, it's because Junior Messerly forgot to mute her mic.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. So
would you say that again? I'm sorry.
Okay, so 食, the character of 食 is to eat. To eat, we can say I eat or I consume. So when you use the text as granary, are you use granary as a noun or a verb?
I'm not sure. I just see it in some English translations. Instead of saying raise taxes, they say raise grain taxes. They put grain.
It does. People can pay rice as tax. For example, maybe they don't collect the money. They most likely they collect the money because they can use for other purpose. So if you want to pay with your bread, if you want to pay with your potato or carrots, you may, or you want to pay rice. If my home I grow rice, I can pay rice as a tax. But in this context, they are collecting money.
I see.
It's not about granary. Granary to me is like more like a noun.
Got it.
Yeah. So going back, so this so 食 is mostly about consuming from our mouth. So Laozi does not say charge tax. Laozi say eating tax. So it's like eating you up, like consuming. So eating and consuming are the most similar word to this context. And of course, this character tax is the tax here. So here, in the ancient time, people could have paid with their crops or their belonging. But here, we like to think of it as tax or tariff, money. And because the superior wants so much tax from them, therefore people are hungry. And the next one, people are difficult to govern due to their superiors' excess interference with law and regulation. Thus, people are difficult to govern. So when there's so much rule and regulation, and if you did something wrong, you will get beat up, you will get prosecuted. We can see this picture here. They use different kind of things to torture people. So the more you torture, the more regulation and legislation or tools to torture people, the more people want to protest, the more people disobey, right? They want to disobey the government because they all have their free will who want to be governed, right? They feel confinement, and people, when they are confined, they have the will, want to get out of the jail to proclaim their freedom. People take death lightly due to their superiors seeking to live extravagantly. So why would people take death lightly? Number one, they don't eat good. They are usually starved to death. And second, they are constantly being tortured. So there's mentally torture, and there's also physically torture. So what's the purpose of life? I might just die. I might as well die, right? So in life, what's the most important thing in life? It's being born, it's birth and death. If people don't care about, I mean, birth is already gone, and people don't care about death, what can be more important than death? Nothing, right? So they are willing to sacrifice their life to fight for their freedom. So one thing to take a look is that what people take death lightly. Let's think about it. Why do they want to? Why they take death lightly? They don't care to live anymore because there's so much law and regulation on them. There's no freedom. Maybe family are being separated to build a great wall, to build an additional imperial court, to serve as a soldier. In the old time, a young boy have to serve in their army. So family are being separated. Let's see here. We can refer to here. The fields are overgrown with weeds. The granary are empty. So you can see people are being separated. So there's the rich become rich, and the poor become poor. So one thing I want to explain to you is this character here, Ho. Due to their superior seeking to live extravagantly. What is Ho? Ho is this character here. Ho is thickness. For example, in Chinese New Year, we give the red envelope. So sometimes when I receive the envelope or when I give the envelope to my kids, they feel the thickness. How many bill is in there? If it's feel thick, that means there's a lot of money. So this is just like our common sensation. But the kids will not think this way. It could be very thick because it's all made out of $1 bill. Or it can be very thin, it's only one piece of $1 bill. But here, whole, we can think of it as it's thick as the gift. Imagine there's a lot of gift on the wagon. So in the old time, they have a gold, right? So when the gold, imagine if the gold is imagine silver is thinner than gold. Gold is thicker. So the thicker it is, it means that there's more value in it. There's more value, more gift. So here talks about the superior seeking to live with a lot of valuable. They want people to serve them with their tax, with their gift. And then here, does people take death lightly? So here I want to explain to you this character lightly. So this character is light. What is considered light? I think in the Chinese saying, I don't remember exactly. You can die as heavy as Mount Tai, or you can die as light as a feather. In other words, you can die like a hero where people cherish your death, or you can die like a piece of sugar. I hope that makes sense. So here, people take death lightly. That means they don't really care about their life. They just want to voice their opinion. Here I have a, let's look at this box here, the yellow box. When one is indulging too much, living on false self, that means one is scraping others' portion, which causes deficiency. So this is what happened when the superior charge too much tax, or they want to live luxurious life, because they are scrapping the citizens or the people's wealth. In other words, they are robber. They rob from the people's wealth to make it their own, and because the people is deficiency in their granary, is deficiency in their purpose of life. They are deficiency in their love. They feel there's no purpose of living, therefore they don't want to live, which cause the intention to live become very diminishing. Okay, again, it is only when one does not live according to self-interest, one is able to live a meaningful life. So here, this one refers to the imperial court, the people in the imperial court, maybe the emperor. It is only when the emperor does not live according to his self-interest. So this one can refer to any government official, the lower level official, the mid level official, or the higher level official, or the imperial. I'm sorry, the emperor. So on this verse here, it has the hidden meaning of wu wei. Can you see wu wei here? Wu wei. So Laozi say it's only when one person live wu wei. Wu wei is to do things without intention. And of course, we know all the superior, they do things with a lot of intention. They do it deliberately. They do it intentionally to rob people's wealth. And if they can do it wu wei without their self-interest, if they can follow their free will with their true self, align themselves with true self, align themselves with Tao, one is able to live a meaningful life.
Do without doing. Do by not doing.
Yeah, do
By not doing.
Do naturally by not doing according to the false self, not according to the ego. Thank you, Robert. So here I want to explain to you the character of Xian. What is Xian? In the ancient time, we often say Xian Ren, Sheng Ren. So Xian, this character, it can mean Jinzi. Jinzi means a scholar. So it's somebody who has more virtue than the common people. So this is done by comparison. For example, I have less virtue, our master have more virtue. Therefore, they are considered 贤人. So one is able to live a meaningful life. So this one is not really embedded in the content, embedded in the translation here. 贤 it also have the meaning of virtue, capable, somebody who is willing to carry out the merit. And 贵, what is 贵? 贵, it means expensive. It can be meaningful, valuable, costly. So definitely we want to live a meaningful life. So going back to Miguel's question, when there are conflicts, should we take sides? So based on chapter 53 and 75, if we look at this quote, definitely in Laozi's perspective, he will take sides, and he will take the sides with the people.
Verse 5 is saying that, well, it does say the Tao doesn't take sides, good or evil, right or wrong, whatever. But I think the other verses that you mentioned are more about not wanting to have people causing harm, government, taking taxes, driving the people away, making them lose their spirit, not care about living or dying, which is different, I think, than what you're saying, Robert, that I believe Taoism promotes compassion and non-harming. I'm not sure I get that from these verses, though.
We as individuals have to make a choice. And sometimes, you know, there's a point where I have to say, is my house my area that I own? Do I own the whole world, or do I own my own house? If I see a wasp nest above my front door, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to do something about that wasp nest. I'm going to have to remove it.
So I wanted to chime in on this question of partiality and impartiality by referring first to chapter 79. There's one line in my translation. It says, "A man without virtue requires others to fulfill their obligations." Presumably requires others to fulfill their obligations to him. And that seems to me to be referring to a form of partiality, where that man without virtue is more partial to his own interest in having others fulfill their obligations to him than he is concerned and less concerned with whether he's fulfilling his obligations to others. Whereas in the previous line, it says a man of virtue performs his part. He fulfills his obligations to others. In other words, he's just as much concerned about their interest in having him fulfill his obligations to them as he is concerned about his own self-interest in having them fulfill their obligations to him. So he's a man of virtue is impartial in the sense that he's equally interested in having them fulfill their obligations to him and having himself fulfill his obligations to them. And then in the last two lines, it says the Tao of heaven is impartial. It stays with good men all the time. And that seems to be implying that the good man is the man who's impartial, in the sense that he's just as much concerned with others' fulfillment of their obligations to him as he is, or just as much concerned with his fulfillment of his obligations to them as he is concerned with their fulfillment of their obligations to him. And then earlier in this chapter, the author seems to go even one step further. He says the sage fulfills his obligations to others. He keeps his half of the bargain, but he does not exact his due. He does not have them fulfill their obligations to him. Why? Because that's what you can do about, going back to the first two lines in this chapter, that's what you can do about the very first line in the chapter, where it says, after a bitter quarrel, some resentment must remain. What can you do about it? Well, you fulfill your obligations to the other guy exactly, and you don't hold him so exactly or at all to his obligations to you, and that's how you reduce resentment. So the sage is even more than impartial. He's kind of more partial to the other guy's interest than he is to his own interest. So that's quite.
I like that. I like that.
Yeah,
Okay.
hold on. I'm going to keep going, and then I'll turn it over to everyone else. So this seems to refer back to chapter 5, which is, you know, I'm going to pick up on this line that says, the space between heaven and earth is like a bellows. The shape changes, but not the form. The more it moves, the more it yields, etc. So the fact is that the quarrels referred to in chapter 79, the bitter quarrels, are the quarrels where there's justice on both sides of the quarrel. Each side has something that they're in the right on, and the other side has something that they're in the right on. There's no clear answer to who's right and who's wrong. You know, the answer, the quarrels where it's very clear one side's right and the other side's wrong, those aren't bitter. They're just settled by a court of law. You know, they don't even go to court. But it's the ones where there's some justice on each side, those are the bitter quarrels. Mm-hmm. And that gets back to chapter 5, where it says heaven and earth are impartial. Why? Because they see that in a lot of quarrels among the straw dogs, of which there are many, there's justice on both sides, and from which neither side in the quarrel can see that. Each side in the quarrel thinks they're right and the other side's wrong, or the other side thinks they're right and the other side's wrong. So each side's partial to its justices on its side. But heaven and earth they're impartial. They see that if in the big scheme of things, there's a little justice on both sides. But when quarrels of that kind arise, where there's justice on both sides and it's very bitter and each side thinks they're right and the other side's wrong, heaven is very far away. And that's why the space between heaven and earth is like a bellows. It comes closer, it gets farther, you know, the shape changes, but not the form. But it gets closer and gets farther because it's close when everything's at peace, but heaven seems very far away when there's a quarrel like this arising.
Yeah, and to answer Miguel's question, I think Laozi would take sides because definitely we show that, and Ilas also see that too, and we all see that.
I think he differentiates the global versus the personal, as you mentioned.
Yes.
But I have just one clarification. When it's the personal, coming back to center means focusing on your own growth instead of focusing on the quarrel? Or what does that exactly mean?
I view Lao Tzu as saying, kind of pick your fights and be careful. I mean, stay within balance. Don't become extreme. I mean, I think that's Lao Tzu's message on things also.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but he also says, protect your life. You know, that's one of the things, in my view, that chapter 5 is trying to tell us that we need to be careful in life. That just opening your front door and walking outside or driving your car, you're going to kill something. You're going to run over an ant. You're going to step on an ant. It's wrong to take life. It's wrong to even step on an ant. But as human beings, that's life. You have to take it. Pardon me? You just have to care about things, and you have to be as careful as hell as you possibly can to not hurt things. That's what Lao Tzu, I think, is also trying to
So
say.
so Ayla, so my point of view here is that I have a slide from the previous session. So staying in the center, that means to align ourselves with Tao. So what is Tao? Tao is everything that's here. All these terms are synonym of Tao. Whether you call it inner self, higher being, true self, it all depends on your religious background. In Buddhism, we call it Sunyata. In Hinduism, we call it Atman or inner Krishna. So when you go back to the center, you align yourself with the true self, not your want. Because if you don't align yourself, that means you are aligned with yourself with your false self, which is your body bag. And these two things are our body bag, our minds, our intellectual mind, our ego. And sometimes our body bag comes with the burden of the family influence, cultural influence, and also our appearance too. So that's what my interpretation on Lao Tzu's point of view, staying in the center, align yourself with the universe. Wu Wei is do without doing, but that do is according to our inner being, not according to our body bag.
Around center, there's the left-right dimension where staying in the center is staying between the left and the right, but there's also the front-back.
Yes.
The temporary, impermanent senses, it's all in the front, whereas the deeper, still, true self is more in the center of one's being, like deeper inside one's body. And this comes from years of Buddhist-style mindful awareness meditation practice.
Yes.
It gets one in touch with a deeper layer of one's being that's not on the surface, it's deeper inside.
Correct.
Towards the spine. And the more one becomes aware of deeper layers of the body that are back towards the spine, the more one can cultivate an ability to stay in a centered, deep within, in a place that is still in the sense of motionless on the inside, even while other more superficial parts of one's being, like the mind and the tactile senses, are active on the outside. And when Lao Tzu talks about doing while not doing, you know, superficial parts of oneself can be washing the dishes, while a deeper part of oneself that's closer back to the back of one's heart towards the spine can be doing nothing and be in Buddhist style equanimity and stillness, and staying in the center, having one's awareness stay more in that still, quiet, equanimous place deep within, despite what's happening on the outside, can also be a form of centeredness. That's more of a front back thing, a balance between not too much front, not too much totally in the back of just sitting on a cushion all day meditating, but it's centered in the middle between the front and the back. Thanks for listening.